Hello educators, I'm Courtney. Welcome to my YouTube channel. We are going to summarize some education related research so that you can incorporate it into your practice. Today we are talking about virtual learning, remote learning, and specifically from the teacher perspective. So what does the research say about teaching remotely, since we are all kind of in that boat right now, and potentially heading back into it. When I started looking at what the research was saying about remote teaching, I found an article from the Journal of Geography called Transitioning from Emergency Remote Learning to Deep Online Learning Experiences in Geography Education. And from there, found some other sources that I think might be useful for you. One thing that this main article did focus on was that the situation we all were in as teachers starting in last March for a lot of us was more of an emergency remote learning situation, not actually remote learning. And there were some stark differences because it kind of made it look like remote teaching and remote learning wasn't a thing that is possible and it didn't go well. When the reality is that the research does support that online learning and remote teaching can be very beneficial to students. It just has to be well planned out, well thought out. You can't just come back from March break and everyone's supposed to know what they're supposed to be doing. That's my caveat there. Within the article that I read, it led me to a book. This article cited a book called Learning Online, which led me to another book called The Online Teaching Survival Guide. Both books are based on research. I'm going to focus on the Online Teaching Survival Guide because it has a chapter in it that is on best practice, which I think would be most beneficial to teachers who are teaching remotely, whether or not they planned on it. In the Online Teaching Survival Guide, which I will link below, there's a chapter about best practices, and they have 10 best practices. So we're going to go through those one by one. Best practice number 1, be present at your course. The idea of presence is discussed in this book from a teacher perspective. They talk about social presence, so it's important for teachers to connect with their students and show themselves like you would in a classroom. You're not just a teacher, you have a life outside of that. So all of that relationship building that you would do in a classroom, it's really important to do online because people are so isolated. The second one is a teaching presence, and this has 2 phases. You start with your design, which is where we were all lacking last year. We didn't have the opportunity to design anything. And then it's your follow through with your teaching activities and how you want the class to run. And then a cognitive presence where you're guiding your students along and making sure that you are connecting with them and ensuring that their learning is experiencing growth as you go. Best practice number 2, create a supportive online course community. This needs to be planned out in advance, and you need to really come up with ways that you can build community amongst your students. Within this best practice too, the author talks about the type of dialogue that you use. You need to plan to have dialogue that goes teacher to student, and student to resource, so that your students are connecting to the material and engaging in the class in an active way. Best practice number 3 is develop a set of explicit workload and communication expectations for your learners. This is important not only to let your students know what work will be expected of them, and for many of us that's dictated by the ministry or your Department of Education or your school board. They will tell you how many minutes you need and how many minutes per subject and all of that. It also includes knowing what your limits are for working at home as an educator. So when are you going to cut yourself off? When will you not answer emails? And really communicate that with students so that your work-life balance stays balanced. Best practice number 4, this is one that we all do anyways, use a variety of large group, small group, and individual work experiences. As teachers in the K-12 classroom, we're doing this anyways, so you can go ahead and check that off your list. Best practice number 5 is to use synchronous and asynchronous experiences. Again, we don't always have control over that. If we are being put into a remote learning and remote teaching situation, it's going to be whatever our district tells us that we have to do and whatever our school board tells us that we have to do. For some people, asynchronous was the expectation. For others, it was synchronous, and others, it was a blend. Really, it came down to what your board's policies were. Hopefully now that we are phasing out of emergency remote teaching and phasing into planned remote teaching, we can really incorporate synchronous and asynchronous experiences for our students. Best practice number 6 is another easy one that you can just go ahead and check off your list. Ask for informal feedback early on in the term. So make sure that you're getting your diagnostic information done, not just in terms of learning goals, but also in terms of the technology needs of your students and whether or not they are able to follow along with your course. Best practice number 7, prepare discussion posts that invite responses, questions, discussions, and reflections. Again, we do this all the time in teaching. Think back to when you were in Teachers College and you had your better questions little graph that was posted in every classroom and you were looking for deeper answers from your students. It's the same thing in online, whether you are doing discussions or like verbal discussions or posts, you want to be looking for deeper answers. Best practice number 8 is to think digital for all course content. The best practice is to think digital for all of the resources, because if people are accessing your class online, then we know that for sure they do have access to online resources. Best practice number 9, combine core concept learning with customized and personalized learning. Again, we already do this as teachers, so we are good there. You can go check that off your list. Best practice number 10, plan a good closing and wrap-up activity for the course. So just like you would in a regular classroom, we're trying to show them along on this journey and that they've learned something valuable. So we are already familiar with using a rich culminating activity to support learning and to help students see themselves in the assignments that we've given them. There's obviously so much more research that is out there regarding remote teaching. I just wanted to highlight and give you just a few ideas of what best practice is saying in case you are finding yourself entering into or continuing on a remote learning journey and you want to incorporate some research-based knowledge into your practice. Well, I hope you found something that you can take away from this video that is research-based, and hopefully you can incorporate it into your practice as we all move into remote learning or continue on with remote learning. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like and comment down below if there's anything else that you would like me to research and summarize for you so that you can get on with your busy day of teaching all of those wonderful kids. Thanks so much and have a good day. Bye.